Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Islands Uncovered. My name is Megan. I am the owner of Dare to Dream Travel, specializing in booking Sandals and Beaches properties, which are all inclusive vacations in the Caribbean. So, like always, today we're going to be starting off with the sales and deals and promos and things that I think that you should be paying attention to when you're booking your next vacation. And then in the second half of the episode, we are going to an island that I haven't covered yet. We're going to Barbados. And last week we were in Curacao, very lighthearted episode about liquor and drinking. And this week we're going back into one of my favorite topics, the spooky, supernatural mystery genre, I guess I can say for this. And I love this kind of stuff, even if I'm not 100% sold on believing that every story I tell is true. I think there's value in listening to the local island lore and legends. And this is a story that I'm telling today that really spread worldwide and got picked up all over the world. And it's just kind of fun to let your mind imagine that mystery and magic and supernatural things may exist in this world, because you know what? We don't know. Who knows? Maybe the story I'm going to tell today and be true, and that is for you to decide. But first, like I said, we always start out with what everybody loves to hear about, because if you're listening to this, you enjoy sandals or beaches or both. And maybe you've been one time, maybe you've been 20 times. But either way, we're going to start talking about all the deals that are important to know about this week, because deals change at Sandals and Beaches all the time. And every week it's different. So let's dive into that first. We're going to start off with Sandals, because honestly, I think the 777 sales this week, these are the rooms that are an additional 7% off for this week only. So starting on January 14th and going through January 20th. I think these are a little less interesting than the beaches ones, I'm going to be honest. Not that I don't love these resorts, I do, but right now they are not switching it up terribly much, because handful of the resorts in Jamaica are closed. So they're keeping it pretty much the same with the 7 resorts that have been on for multiple weeks in a row. And we're seeing mostly butler category rooms. It's a great time to book if you're a butler person. I mean, I love a butler, but I get it. Not everybody can afford a butler all the time. Also, I don't personally think that you need a butler every time you go to Sandals. Is it nice? Yeah, it's nice to have somebody wait on you and bring you drinks and save you a seat at the beach and do all the great things that these butlers do. Is it necessary to have a good time? Absolutely not. I can have a great time in any single room category you put me in. Try me. Send me. Send me to Sandals and Beaches. Put me in a luxury category room. I guarantee you I will have a good time. But this week, if you are able to splurge on these butler rooms looking for a treat, once again, lots of butler rooms available. We've got butler room in Curacao with the private pool. We've got a oceanfront penthouse 2-story butler suite at Grand St. Lucia. Splurge. Go to St. Lucia for your honeymoon and get this President Clinton oceanfront penthouse 2-story butler suite. Absolutely amazing out on that peninsula. Or we've got a butler suite at Sandals St. Vincent, the ones with the private pool that were renovated to include this pool and that are opening January 25th. You want to be one of the first people in this room? Great week to book. Also, we've got the Rondevals at Sandals Royal Barbados. Those are butler level category, as well as going over to St. Lucia La Toc, the one up on the bluffs. We've got the Sunset Bluff honeymoon oceanfront 1-bedroom butler villa suite with the private pool. Lots of private pools this week. That's great. Love me a private pool. That's when you see the pictures where the butlers bring the little floating trays that sit in the pool, and then you can just be in the pool eating your fruit. They always show fruit, like everybody's so healthy. I wonder if they ever have anybody ask for like a cheeseburger in the pool. I mean, it's a private pool. You can do whatever the hell you want, right? Okay. So, moving on, you can tell it's close to dinner time. I'm talking about cheeseburgers in the pool. But also, club level room over at Sandals Halcyon, also in St. Lucia. This is the smaller resort in St. Lucia, but you have access to the two others. And then a club level at Sandals Ochi. This is the poolside club level villa room. All these rooms have recently been on 777, but if you've been thinking about booking, you don't know if they will continue to be on sale a couple weeks. I mean, they certainly are not going to be on sale next week, but we don't know if this cycle is going to continue where Sandals is going to keep putting these rooms on sale. So again, if you are looking at butler level rooms, these butler rooms at any of the Sandals properties, great week to take a look, reach out, let's get you booked. Okay. I said beaches was going to be a little bit more interesting, and here's why. Last week was the first week that they put a room from the new Treasure Beach Village at Beaches Turks and Caicos on 777. This week, another room. So it's very similar to the one that they had last week, except the names. Like I always say, you've got to pay attention to these names. This week, it's the same room, except in the name, it's Ocean View, which means you got a beautiful view of Grace Bay Beach. This week, it's the Treasure Beach Ocean View Concierge Suite. So set up the exact same way as the one I described last week, with the bedroom with the king bed and then the separate room for the kids with the bunk beds. You got the two bathrooms, you got a private patio balcony. If you want to fit 6 people in this room, you certainly can. There's a pull-out couch in the same room as the king bed. Go for it. Cram as many kids in this room as you possibly can. Get the best value. But this week you got a little bit better view than last week. This is on sale for that additional 7% off through next Tuesday. And here's my tip. If you do not like to pull your kids out of school, there are always blackout dates for these sale prices. You're not going to get spring break at the sale rate. I checked, June and July are blacked out. However, look closer to when school starts. Look at the second half, middle of August. Starting, I believe it's August 10th, starting August 8th, this room is on sale now. So, when I'm always saying, find a travel advisor that you trust that is going to get you the best rates, this is what I'm talking about. Find somebody that if you come to them and say, hey, I'm looking at August, maybe the first week of August, I'd really like to go into the Treasure Beach Villa. Find somebody you trust who you know would say to you, hey, look, if you move it one more week later, that room is going to be an additional 7% off. So take a look. Maybe that 7% is worth it to you. Maybe not. That's okay. But at least they show you those options, because a lot of people don't realize that just because it's on 777 doesn't mean it's on sale every single date. So it is on 777 toward after August 8th of this coming year. That's when I would go if it was me. There are other rooms on 777. I know I've been talking a lot about Treasure Beach, but I've just seen a lot of interest in that. There is a 2-bedroom butler villa in the Seaside Village that's on 777. And then this week, the Italian poolside walkout concierge family suite with the kids' room is on 777. So if you are a family that likes that walkout room right by the pool in the Italian Village, it's on sale this week. So that is also a great thing to take advantage of. And then there's 4 rooms in Negril. I hate to always just like pass through Negril because I love beaches Negril. I love Jamaica in general. But they've just been having 4 rooms from this resort that vary from kings to queens or different size bedrooms. This week, they're pretty basic between doubles and kings. And then there's a 1-bedroom concierge family suite. So you'd have the king bed in a separate room. Anyway, I guess my point is with Negril, I can find you a room on sale. Like, just contact me. You tell me what you want, we'll work it out. If it's not on sale this week, it's probably going to be in a couple weeks because they are rotating through these rooms at Negril fairly well. And so you tell me what you want, we'll stack those deals. Last week, we talked about the winter blues sale that's going on now. Very quick reminder, 5 nights or more, you get $150 spa credit. 7 nights or more, you're going to get a catamaran cruise for 2 people. There are restrictions on these. I'm not going to go into the details of this deal. There's resort credit, there's instant credit, percentage off, all the stuff. I'm not going to go into the fine details of this because I did it last week. You can go back and listen. It goes until February 2nd. You can stack that with the 777, but there are a lot of restrictions, especially for beaches. So please reach out if you have interest in learning more about what those may be and if the vacation that you are considering is going to qualify for this sale. I'm happy to talk that through with you. But I did want to mention one more thing that I found very interesting. I always look at the last minute deals. So last minute deals are advertised a lot on those emails that you get, where you'll get an email from Sandals or Beaches and say rooms as low as da da da. Those rates are usually coming from a last minute deal. But last minute deals aren't just any date. You can't just think to yourself, oh, well, if I travel in 2 weeks, that's a last minute deal. That's not necessarily how it works. There are set arrival and departure dates that you have to kick in these last minute sales. And the last minute sales are really good because they're going to include a free night, usually starting at like 4 nights, get a free night, which is a really low amount of nights to get a free night. And you can stack this with the 777 deal too. So they're really great deals, but you have to pay attention to when you're going to qualify for this. And what I thought people might like to know is that there haven't been a lot of last minute deal options at many of the resorts because this is all based on availability. And there just simply isn't a lot of availability right now because of certain resorts being closed due to Hurricane Melissa. But Sandals Ochi and Sandals Negril have lots and lots of last minute deals available for all different dates in February. It's not all the dates. You can't just throw in a random Wednesday to Sunday and assume that that's going to work. You still have to be specific, but these 2 resorts have a lot of last minute opportunities in February. So if you are just like, I want to get out of this miserable weather and I need a vacation, something inexpensive, reach out. I will make sure that we are looking at these options in February because Jamaica's easy to get to. I've been there since the hurricane. Go enjoy the beach, enjoy the water, enjoy the pool, have a pina colada for me and report back. And I promise you, you're not going to regret taking 4 nights to go to Jamaica and just relax and get some sun. So there are a few other resorts that have last minute deals right now, but those are the 2 I wanted to point out because there's just so many options available. Okay, so I think that wraps up the sales and promos for this week. We talked about the 777s. We talked about the winter blues sale that's still going on. And we talked about how you need a vacation and you need to check out the last minute deals, particularly at Sandals Negril and Sandals Ochi in Jamaica. If you have any questions on any of these and or want a free quote, please reach out. So now the fun part, the spooky part. Today, we are headed to Barbados. I wish I was headed to Barbados. As you know, there are 2 Sandals properties in Barbados. We've got Sandals Royal Barbados and Sandals Barbados. They are both right next to each other, side by side, along Dover and Maxwell Beach. And this area is called St. Lawrence Gap. It's pretty lively and fun, and there's resorts and tourists and beaches and everything that you would expect when you are looking for a tropical vacation getaway. But our story does not take place on the beach. Our story today takes place a few miles off the beach where it's quiet, a bit older, and heavy with history and folklore and all the good stories that you can expect from a Caribbean island. More specifically, where we're headed is Christ Church Parish Church. It's a very, very old church. It was built back in 1629. It was just a old wooden structure. That building, unfortunately, was destroyed by a flood in the mid 1600s. And then a second church was built. That was destroyed by the Great Hurricane of 1780. Then we have a third church destroyed by a hurricane in 1831. A fourth church destroyed by a fire in 1935. And the fifth and current church, which is the present building, that was consecrated in 1935. And it uses a lot of elements still from that fourth church, as it was not completely destroyed by the fire. But the time frame that we're talking about today with Christ Church Parish Church starts back in 1724, when the Chase Vault was first constructed. And so, timeline wise, this would be after the second church was built, and then into when the third church was erected, as well as when our story takes place today. It seems like even this church has a bit of bad luck to it, but we're not talking about the church today. We're talking about the area surrounding the church. And what is normally surrounding a church? That is going to be a graveyard. And this is a very old graveyard. Today, we're talking about what's known as the Chase Vault. It is still in the same spot today. You can go to it. It is not a tourist destination by any means. However, the Chase Vault story has been told worldwide many times. And so it is famous in a way, but not well known in the sense where if you go, you're going to see a bunch of other people flocking to it. Or at least I wouldn't think so. So the Chase Vault was built in 1724. And it's built of solid coral limestone, which is the same material that is used in a lot of Barbados's oldest buildings. It's not very decorative at all. It's got very thick walls. And if you look up a photo of it, you're going to see that you walk up to the vault, and the vault is half in the ground and half above the ground. So if you were going to walk into the doorway of the vault, you're going to have to walk down a bit to be standing level with getting in the door, if that makes sense. There's no windows, and it's not a huge vault by any means. It's about 12 foot by 6.5 feet, enough to fit multiple coffins inside, but not in a fancy mausoleum way, more in just a nicely stacked way. When you enter the inside of the vault, it's just one room. The ceiling is a bit vaulted, but if you look at it from the outside, the ceiling looks flat. Now, the thing to remember is that there are no windows. There is one door made of a huge, massive marble slab, which is extremely heavy and was described as needing about 6 or 7 men just to move the door. So it's a process to get into this vault. The story I'm going to tell today was first told by the director of Christ Parish Church, and then was later retold and documented by Captain James Alexander in his book called The Transatlantic Sketches. Of course, it's well known around Barbados from storytelling and legends as well. All right, so let's talk about what makes this vault so mysterious. The first person who purchased the vault was Mr. James Elliot, and he purchased it for his wife, Elizabeth, who unfortunately passed away back in 1792. She was placed in the vault as the single inhabitant at the time. The vault was later purchased in approximately 1807 by the Walrent family. And that's kind of how these vaults worked. So a family would own them, and then for whatever reason, they could sell them to another family. Now, 1807, the Walren family purchases the vault for their family member named Thomasina. So the Walren family knew that Elizabeth was laid to rest in the vault and they were going to let her stay there. So they opened up the vault to place their family member Thomasina, and Elizabeth wasn't there. Now, this is not necessarily a part of the mystery. I think that there's a lot of reasons why Elizabeth may not have been in the vault. The family could have chosen to move her, bury her somewhere else after they sold it. It's just a point of reference in the history of this vault so that you can imagine who's supposed to be in there and how many coffins and people are laid to rest. So they open the vault. Elizabeth is not there. Thomasina is placed in her wooden casket in the vault and laid to rest. Very shortly after that time, sometime between 1807 and 1808, after Thomasina was laid to rest in the vault, the Chase family then purchased the vault from the Walren family. Now, this was a family of very wealthy English plantation owners. They had a lot of privilege. They had a lot of money. And so they purchased this vault. And I think that many of the vaults like this, these family vaults, probably were owned by wealthier families. And so this is where the mystery begins to deepen. So the Chase family owns the vault, and unfortunately, the first person that is laid to rest in the vault is their daughter, Mary Ann, who died at the age of 2. She needed a burial plot, and she was then laid to rest in the vault in February 22nd of 1808. Thomasina was, in fact, still in her wooden coffin when they opened it for Mary Ann. All was fine. They sealed it back up. They buried Mary Ann in a very heavy lead coffin. So this is an airtight coffin, extremely heavy. This is what the wealthy buried their dead in, and it was designed more to preserve the body as opposed to the wooden casket that Thomasina was buried in. So each coffin that is lead, including Mary Ann's, even though she was quite small, weighs several hundred pounds and takes a lot of people to move into the vault. So now we have Mary Ann and Thomasina in the vault. And then the Chase family had some issues. I did a lot of research on this. Some people didn't go into detail about the family's history. Other people touched on it. However, it seems like they got issues. Darkos was the older sister of Marianne, and she is rumored to have starved herself to death because of her abusive family situation. She was put in the Chase vault on July 16th of 1812. So that's going to be 4 years after her sister is when the oldest sister is laid to rest in the vault. The vault was open, all is fine. Again, we have Thomasina in her wooden casket, and we have the 2 sisters in their very heavy lead caskets, all laid to rest in the vault. And then next we have Dad, which from what I have read may have been the root of the family issues. Just a month after the older sister, Darkos, was laid to rest, we've got Dad who I did read that he may have committed suicide. August 9th, 1812, they're going to open this vault, put Colonel Thomas Chase, who the vault is named after, the girl's father, going to place him in the vault with his daughters. And according to the parish records from the church, the men who were tasked with opening the vault, they're just expecting a routine burial, but they pushed open that huge marble slab and opened the door, and what they saw inside was shocking. The coffins inside were not at all how they had been placed just a month earlier. Remember, the oldest sister died just a month ago, and one was leaning up against a wall, one was upside down, and they were stacked kind of in strange angles, and it looked like they were just kind of violently shoved around. But the seal from the door had not been broken. So it's not like the door is just placed. They actually have it sealed. And there were no cracks in the wall, no signs of forced entry. And one later account that I read said that the scene within the vault was one of confusion, as though some unseen hand had tossed the coffins about like playthings. And remember, these are heavy, heavy coffins, and they're just like willy nilly all over, not just like somebody came in and pried it open. They were tossed all around. But they thought, okay, explanation. First explanation that comes to mind, usually the most logical one. I mean, I guess not for everybody, but somebody came in, right? Somebody came in, they entered, they moved them. So this is, nobody likes people messing with the dead. They rearranged the coffins back very respectfully. We have 4 people in there now, and the vault was sealed. And they're like, okay, now hopefully that does not happen again. 4 years pass, and unfortunately, a small infant in the Chase family passes away on September 25th of 1816. They go through the process again, unseal the vault, move the extremely heavy door. They look inside. Once again, the caskets are strewn about, like on their side, up against the wall, moved all around. Okay, they go through the process. They put them all back, stack them nicely. 2 months later, another death. Remember, this is 1816. People die all the time. So we've got November 17th, 1816. Someone else in the family dies. They open it again. Same thing has happened. Everything is moved around, tossed about. And one thing I think about is that if this was, you think people, right? You're like, okay, if this was grave robbers and they were coming in, they've already checked all of the other caskets and taken stuff. If there's even stuff in there, this isn't like an Egyptian pyramid where people are being buried with jewels and, fine golds and all this stuff. There's really nothing in the vault for people to steal. But it was a wealthy family. So if somebody was coming in and stealing stuff every time they buried, they would know, hey, I already checked those 800-pound caskets, so I don't probably need to move them again. I'm just going to check the new one. This is not like that. All of the caskets were, again, all over this vault. So they put them all back. That's November of 1816. And then July of 1819, we have another burial, and this is a woman named Thomasina. Not Thomasina, Thomasina. But this time, when they go in, not only are the coffins all strewn about all again, but the original Thomasina, who was not a part of the Chase family, remember, she was buried in that wooden casket because she was one of the first people to come in and maybe was not from a wealthier family. And so she had this wooden casket, and the wood was all in a pile. And some reports say it was even like tied together. So it was just like a tied pile of wood. No mention of a body. I don't know if it would have been decomposed at that point. I don't want to get too gruesome here, but there were no recounts of that, just that the wooden casket itself was tied together and the other lead coffins were just, once again, completely strewn about the room. So, okay, now we've had enough. This has happened multiple times. There are rumors flying all over Barbados about the Chase Vault and what is going on. And so the actual governor, Lord Combermere, ordered an investigation. And he's like, look, I know there's all these crazy ghost stories. We are going to disprove that. This is not a ghost story. Let's get some proof of what is going on. We're going to do an experiment. And so what they did is they, once again, carefully put all of the coffins back where they were supposed to be inside the vault. They spread a nice fine sand across the floor to capture footprints, because if somebody's coming in, this sand is going to get completely messed up. They sealed the vault and placed an official mark on the entrance. So the governor they sealed it, and then the governor put a mark on there so that if somebody were to open it, the mark would be disturbed. And in some accounts, I read that there were multiple witnesses to this, and other people put other marks around this door as well. Remember, there is no other way to get in. You have to go in this door. And what it makes me think of is like when you are going on an overnight group trip, like in like grade school or high school, and the chaperones like put you in your hotel room and then put tape on the outside of the door. That's what this reminds me of. Okay, so that was in 1819. April 18th of 1820. Nobody died, but they're like, all right, we got to get in this vault and see if it's messed up again because we did all this work. This was an experiment. Let's see what happens. So they open the vault. The seals are still all sealed. They move the door, and what do they see? The coffins have once again been moved all around. The wood is still tied up in a corner. There's no footprints. There's no sign of entry. Like I said, it was all sealed up, and they have no idea what is going on. And so at that point, they're like, we have no idea what's going on. We do not want our loved ones, our deceased, to keep being messed with by whatever forces this could be. And so shortly after that, the coffins were removed from the Chase vault and buried somewhere else entirely so that they would not be disturbed anymore at this point. And after that, the vault was said to be sealed permanently, and it's remained empty ever since. Nobody else has ever been buried in the Chase vault. And it's very much still there to this day. You can go to the church, you can see it. There has been a little bit of remodeling done, I guess, around the outside. There is a little it's like there's a gate on the front door part that reminds me of homes in like Arizona where they have like the gated door that you can keep open, but it keeps like the animals out. There's one of those, and then there's a little like not patio, but like slab of cement on the top part before you walk down that didn't used to be there. So if you are going to look up pictures, I will put some links in the show notes, but make sure you're looking at the photos of what it looked like back in the 1800s because it's a little different than what it looks like today, but it still looks very old. And if you go, you can't like go in the vault. It's just if you wanted to see the outside and where it is. So there's, of course, theories of what happened, and we'll talk about those briefly here. But every one of these theories has a reason of why it really couldn't be that. So that's what makes this story and legend so enduring, because there's not a great answer of what could have possibly been going on. So the first theory that some historians argue is it could have been a flood. It's slightly underground, so groundwater could enter the vault. Water may have been able to shift the coffins around if the vault became flooded with water. So it's possible because coffins can float, but these coffins would not float very easily. Remember, they are so heavy, and there was no water damage ever recorded inside the vault. Remember, Thomasina's coffin was made of wood, and there was no water damage on the wood. And the coffins were also sometimes stacked upward, like leaning up against a wall, like if the person was standing up. And water is not going to push a many 100-pound lead coffin into an upright position. So I don't know. That one just doesn't really shake out for me. The other theory that some people have suggested is an earthquake. So if there's an earthquake, that could mess with the coffins and shake them around a bit. However, there have been no seismic tremors recorded during that time period in Barbados. And if you were going to have an earthquake of a magnitude that is not only going to shake a 100-pound lead coffin around a room, but also lean it up against a wall, they're going to have a record of that. Also, they said the vault would have probably collapsed if it was something of that magnitude. Third, we kind of talked about this before, human interference. It's probably the most practical explanation, but possibly the hardest to prove. like we talked about, the vault has no second entrance. The seals were always intact. They put the sand on the ground. There was no disturbance in the sand. And if it was a hoax, these people would have had to be repeating this same hoax for years. And there's no motivating reason to do it. They weren't stealing anything. They just have, it doesn't make sense to me that somebody would commit their life to this type of a hoax with no benefit. I don't know. There's a lot of weird people out in the weird world that get a kick out of a lot of weird things. So it's possible, but there's no payoff for me that I'm seeing with this. If you can think of one, let me know. I'm just not seeing it. And then the fourth theory, the supernatural. So this is where the folklore of the islands always come in. Some stories claimed that the Chase family was cursed. Certainly could seem that way. Others suggest that there might have been some unrest among the dead because of the brutality of the plantation society during that era. I mean, this didn't really happen until the Chase family bought the vault. The first two people to own the vault had no issue with this. So, like I said, this family, there's some rumors about them, but historians are always very careful when it comes to the supernatural and folklore. And the quote here is, "The Chase vault endures not because of proof, but because of the absence of explanation." And the absence is what's powerful. And that's what makes a story like this so fun, because like many of the other stories that I've told you, you can decide for yourself what you want the explanation for this to be. And if you get really adventurous and you're headed off resort anyway, maybe you want to take a pit stop to Christ Church Parish Church and see the vault for your own eyes. It's silent, it's sealed, it's very unassuming, so you have to kind of seek it out. Although I'm sure if you see a worker from the church, they will be able to point you in the right direction because, as I mentioned, this story is very well known. Thank you again for listening to Islands Uncovered this week. I hope you had fun listening to this story in Barbados. Please subscribe to this podcast if you enjoyed it so that it will pop up each week and you can listen to the resort updates and sales and new stories from different islands along the way. Maybe learn something before you go on your next Sandals and Beaches adventure. I'd love if you would follow along on my social media channels. I've got DTD Travel WI on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on TikTok at Dare to Dream Travel WI. And then YouTube as well. That channel is Islands Uncovered. Not only are these podcasts featured on my YouTube channel, but I also do video clips highlighting different things about the resort, rooms, weddings. Those have video with it as opposed to the podcast, which is just audio at this time. Because it's just little old me doing this, and I've only got so much time to share these stories. But I hope you enjoyed, and if I can help you with any Sandals or Beaches vacation questions, get you some room quotes, help get you on your way to experience these islands for yourself, please reach out. My services are 100% free to you. I am always very happy to talk about the Caribbean, Sandals and Beaches, vacations in a very no pressure atmosphere. I'm not salesy at all. I just want to help you get the very best rates on your next vacation. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.